Oscar opened his eyes wide, observing the red smoke in front of him. Chemicals from the test tube evaporated. He muttered to himself that it was time. Then he opened the lid and quickly poured it into the flask. He examined it for a moment and smiled. Not bad. Oscar held the potion he had made, thinking, people say class is forever. I made this for practice, but it seems I worried too much. Meanwhile, in a corner, Frank was panting as if he were about to die. He yelled, "My back is broken," as he dropped the bags of ingredients. Oscar didn't even look but just praised him. "Good job, did you recover all the lost pharmaceuticals?" Frank, exhausted, collapsed, leaning against the bags. "Of course, look, but do you have anything to drink? I feel like I'm about to faint." "Here's the receipt," Oscar replied to Frank. "I have a fatigue recovery potion." He was very surprised. "What, isn't that very expensive? Give it here." Oscar handed Frank the potion he had just made. "Here, I'll take the receipt." Frank gratefully accepted it, tears of joy welling up. "Thank you." He drank it and immediately praised its warmth and deliciousness. "You just made this?" Oscar replied. "Yeah, just now." Then he opened the bags of herbs and assessed the perfect condition of the ingredients. Frank proudly said, "I brought the best ones." The shopkeeper went crazy because of it. Oscar asked, "Really, with that eye, you should be a merchant instead of a mage?" Frank replied, "I'll consider it when our tower collapses." But before he could finish, Oscar headbutted him several times. Frank put his hand on his aching forehead. "Why did you do that?" Oscar realized he was a bit too harsh. "Sorry, I accidentally did it. It's because of your ominous words." Then Frank wondered, "Anyway, what do we do now?" Elder Fidelina said it would be very difficult for me to help you if you do it alone. Oscar thought of Fidelina's extremely unpleasant expression and how annoyed she was with him, but he had already assigned the task. "Then let's start by organizing the ingredients." He gently lifted the bags, although he didn't necessarily need assistance. Currently, the White Tower has countless troublesome children, even though they are very talented. The gears don't mesh. If they could combine, they would greatly contribute to the tower's strength. And one of them is Frank Sirius. Looking at the young man in front of him, Oscar kept thinking, "I'm sure there's a reason why many people rate him so highly. I'm a little curious about him, so this is the perfect time to confirm it." At this moment, Frank asked, "I realized it when I bought them, but aren't they all poisonous?" He listed the names: Black Trumpet of the Valley, Red Tea, Death Cap Mushrooms, Mia Leaves, and... Oscar answered, "Just because they're poisonous doesn't mean they can't be used as medicine. You know what to do before using them, right?" Frank replied, "Boil the poisonous herbs in water for 12 hours to remove the toxins." Oscar arranged the herbs in pots and praised him. "Exactly, except there's a problem with that method. The active ingredients will be lost." "Frank, do you know that dish called dumplings?" He replied, "Of course I've eaten some before, but why mention it?" Oscar immediately explained, "To make dumplings, we use a steamer. If you use that to remove toxins, we'll retain most of the substance in the medicine. This way, we can retain 98% of the ingredient's efficacy." Frank looked surprised and asked again, "Wait, really? Then the exclusivity of the pharmaceutical excipients isn't the whole story?" Oscar interrupted him, "This method is feasible, just like White Tower did before." Frank watched the person next to him. "And that's the end of the detoxification process?" Oscar replied, "No, this just softens the ingredients, making them easier to detoxify." Oscar opened the steamer lid. "The detoxification process is just beginning." He raised his hand towards the steamer. A powerful beam of light emitted as he cast the air suction magic. The air inside the steamer had transformed into a small cloud. Oscar lifted it while explaining, "We just need to extract the toxins from the steamer. Look closely at the smoke now separating into pink and green, then condensing into a clear orb containing the toxins." Oscar manipulated the partially processed medicinal orbs in the steamer until they were completely free of toxins, "So we just need to mix them in the correct proportions: 23% red tea, 47% Merva leaves." After a while of mixing and preparation, Oscar finally held a vial of jade green medicine. "This is the Cadena flu medicine. How's that? Easy, right?" Frank's eyes widened in bewilderment, not understanding what was happening. Oscar said, "Now it's your turn." Hearing this, Frank stiffened. What turn? When he started practicing, Frank muttered to himself, easier said than done, I still can't use magic simultaneously, but I can't tell him I don't know how to cast 2 spells at once, so I'll just tell him to start with the air suction spell. Watching Frank's execution, Oscar couldn't help but assess him. His mana control was a little unstable, but not too bad. He's doing better than I thought. However, that's all. Just after praising him, Frank started struggling with a huge purple orb. Oscar saw this and asked, "What's wrong?" Frank replied, "Are you kidding me? I can't multitask. You have to be level 4 or 5 to understand the mechanism of this. I'm only level 3. Hearing that, he kindly said, "Let me teach you." Frank was startled and asked again, "You're going to teach me that secret technique?" Oscar replied, "Try thinking of it as separating your mind. It will be easier if you understand the mechanism." Oscar carefully explained to Frank, "On your left side, you use magic A, and on your right side, you use magic B. Try it, it's okay to fail." Frank had a bit of an existential crisis but still raised his hand to follow instructions. Separate them, huh? And then the toxic fumes successfully condensed. Frank couldn't help but feel excited. Oscar clapped. "Congratulations, you've learned multitasking," the young man blurted out. "It's that easy." "Then why did they keep it a secret for so long? I thought it was very difficult." Oscar suddenly turned serious and replied, "Because they're greedy." He thought to himself, they don't want to teach the technique, they spent a lot of effort learning it, and giving it away for free became a tradition. On the other side, Frank continued dividing 23% red tea, 47% Merva leaves. Then Oscar thought again, but in the battlefield, tradition is an obstacle to survival, sharing techniques and solutions is essential every day. Seeing Frank's enthusiasm after creating the product, Oscar was also happy. White Tower now needs to actively teach and exchange knowledge. And he did a great job of this. He offered praise. "Good job, you're very talented. Honestly, I didn't think you'd succeed on your first try." Frank held the long vial of medicine, his face slightly flushed with joy. "That's because you explained it clearly." Oscar still didn't forget to tease him. "Even though you just went crazy at me earlier." Frank coughed a few times at that. He crouched down, pretending to rummage through the medicine bag. "Oh, there are so many ingredients left, I have to keep making medicine." He glanced at Frank and smiled gently. "I have a bigger steamer, so let's do it all at once." Frank happily replied, "Okay." A few hours later, 2 large tables were filled with countless vials of medicine. Frank slumped to the floor, gasping for breath. "I'm dead." Oscar remained steady, counting the medicine, a total of 514 vials. Maxim suddenly rushed in and yelled, "Oscar, we have a problem." He asked again, "What is it?" Maxim presented a notice. Lamb Tower Newtech Pharmaceutical Company confirmed Serin's visit an hour ago, the purpose being to meet with Archbishop Baldwin. Maxim continued, "It seems we're a little late." Oscar thought for a moment, so they not only delayed the time but also had no prior plan. Maxim hesitantly said, "If they had a prior contract," Frank added, "then our medicine will be useless." After saying that, tears fell from his eyes. Maxim immediately ran over to calm him down. "Sometimes there are unlucky moments in life." Oscar suddenly spoke up, "It's not over yet. If I remember correctly, the Cadena flu is classified as a Class B disaster. If so, there's still something we can do." Maxim asked again after hearing that. "Really?" he replied, "Yes, Elder, your highest flight speed is faster than a carriage, isn't it?" At a hotel in Siren. A knock on the door sounded. "Archbishop, the guest you mentioned has arrived." He replied, "Let them in." He belonged to the main religion of the Altera Empire, Archbishop Baldwin. A level 5 mage of Lamb Tower. Moira Main bowed first to greet him. "Elsha, thanks to you, we were able to get here safely." Behind him was the CEO of Newtech Pharmaceuticals, Neil Bryan. Baldwin gestured. "Elsha, please have a seat." Moira replied with a smile, "Thank you, Archbishop." Baldwin spoke first. "So how's the production of the Cadena flu medicine going?" He confidently replied, "It's going very smoothly." He seemed pleased after hearing that, just as expected from Lamb Tower and Newtek. When will they be completed? Moira said, we just need clinical trials. Neil added, with these results, we can get approval from the Imperial Food and Drug Administration. Baldwin excitedly exclaimed upon hearing that, but Moira forced a smile and said, however. As you know, the experiment can't end in a day, Baldwin asked urgently, so when do you plan to sell it? Moira pledged, within half a year, I promise. Baldwin heard this and shouted, half a year. I have to leave Vince in the next 4 months. Moira couldn't help but be confused, but the plan was that suddenly there was a knock on the door. Baldwin angrily shouted, what is it? The reply from outside was, Archbishop, another mage wants to see you. He reluctantly agreed and let them in. He looked at Moira and clicked his tongue. Why didn't you say there were others? Moira, a little defensively, replied, yes, we have no one else with us. Hearing that, the three of them hesitantly turned to the door, simultaneously wondering, who is this? A figure stepped in. If I remember correctly, LCIA is a greeting in the guild. Oscar placed his hand on his chest, bowed slightly. Hello, I am Oscar Crushen, a second-rank mage of the White Tower. He smiled, I'm here to offer you a better deal. After hearing Oscar's introduction, Baldwin felt puzzled and asked, the White Tower, what brings you here? Oscar gently replied, I'm here to sell the cure for the Cadena flu. This statement surprised everyone. Baldwin said, just in time, the two of you here are also here for a similar purpose. Oscar politely replied, oh, am I too late? Baldwin sighed, no, they're not fully prepared yet. Oscar heard that and said, what a relief to hear that. The White Tower is ready to negotiate right here if that is necessary. Moira angrily yelled upon seeing this, that's a lie, those from the White Tower have neither the funds nor the technology to develop the cure. Baldwin exclaimed, that's a valid point. What's your last name, Oscar? Oscar replied, it is Sage, it's more like no Crushen. Baldwin nodded, very good, Oscar Crushen, do you really have a cure? Oscar placed a small box down. Who would dare to lie to the Archbishop of the Altera Guild? He opened the box, revealing a vial of the antidote he had prepared. This is a sample, Baldwin joyfully exclaimed, oh my God. If we end up negotiating like this, I'll ask him straight away how much he can produce and when. Seeing a major business deal slipping away, Moira panicked and shouted, Archbishop Baldwin. He's not someone to be trifled with. Why did you yell at me? You're the one who came here unprepared. Moira was at a disadvantage, but we don't have permission from the Imperial Pharmacy and Medicine Manager. Then he seemed to remember something. Ah, that's right. He turned to Oscar and asked, hey, have you gotten approval from the Imperial Pharmaceutical Association? Oscar calmly replied, not yet. Moira laughed triumphantly upon receiving the answer, just as I predicted, Archbishop, the White Tower's case is no different from ours. We can mass-produce it throughout the territory once we get approval. Furthermore, remember that we're talking about the White Tower. Oscar looked at him without saying a word. Moira went on and on about the long history of our tower. I assure you that the treatment we're developing with the best pharmaceutical company currently available will be far superior. Hearing this, Oscar retorted, you're right, however, it's humorous to hear you mention your tower's long history, in front of a mage from the White Tower. Moira glared, her face extremely displeased. What? Take that back. Oscar waved his hand. Did I say anything wrong? In terms of the territory's history, which Mage Tower was founded first? Moira helplessly asked. You're seriously only calculating a 5-year difference? Oscar repeated, only a 5-year difference. Interesting. That 5-year difference you mentioned, the gap that all the masters of your Blue Tower want to close, is a gap that even after 1,000 years, no, even 10,000 years, you won't be able to catch up to the White Tower. That's how history works. You've surely forgotten the White Tower's monopoly on the new drug market 20 years ago. Moira couldn't help but gnash his teeth in anger. He waved his hand in denial. That's the past, no one will remember. Suddenly, he stopped talking. Oscar now seemed to exude an overwhelming aura, a past no one remembers. So that's what you think? Then that invisible pressure disappeared. Both Moira and Neil were terrified. What was that feeling just now? that wasn't the power a second-rank mage could exert, Oscar had to say. Then I'll have to remind you. Moira incomprehensibly exclaimed, what? At this moment, a servant suddenly ran in, holding a phone and shouting, Archbishop, I apologize for interrupting, but there's an urgent call. Baldwin frowned and asked, from who? The servant replied that it was from the Lord of Vince. A flurry of voices came from the other end of the line. Thank you for your immeasurable kindness. Baldwin still didn't understand what was happening. Kindness. The other side replied, yes, for sending us the Cadena flu cure. He was astonished upon hearing this. The Lord of Vince continued, the elders of the White Tower told us that you prepared them secretly with them, and therefore I thank you. All patients who received a dose of the antidote recovered in just a few hours. It's a miracle. This must be a blessing from the goddess. Oscar watched this unfold, a triumphant smile on his face. Baldwin didn't quite understand but continued the conversation. Haha, it's good to hear that. Does it have any side effects? The other end replied, not with the current situation. That's wonderful. Can you tell me when the second shipment will be? I've asked the elders of the White Tower. The Lord recalled what Maxim had said at the time, that depends on the Archbishop, and relate it to Baldwin, and that's what you said. This isn't to pressure you or anything. Baldwin chuckled wearily, we'll send the second shipment as soon as possible, it won't take long. The other side was overjoyed. Thank you very much, LCIA. After the call ended, Baldwin turned to Oscar and asked, Oscar Crushen, was this your doing? Oscar cheerfully replied, yes, it seems they've arrived safely. Moira furiously slammed his fist on the table. Archbishop, this violates the Pharmaceutical Guild's regulations, he should be punished. Oscar immediately interrupted, no. You don't seem to understand much about the law, do you? Do you know about wartime legal issues? Moira shouted, don't change the subject, why are you talking about that? Oscar sighed, thinking, it seems the past 20 years have been so peaceful, how could they forget that? He began to explain, 20 years ago. The weapon that has claimed the most lives in our battle with demons is a pandemic. Even with the mages quickly creating the antidote, it took so long for the Medicine Association to approve them, people died before that approval was given. His Majesty added a line to the 42nd page. Chapter 8 stated that treatments for the war wounded would be classified as special treatments, and would not be subject to the Empire's Pharmaceutical Association's laws. Moira weakly protested, but we're not at war now. But Oscar cut him off. There are 3 situations where a scenario is considered a state of war. The first is when there's an ongoing war against another race or country, the second is when there's a revolution, the last is when there's a Class B crisis. Hearing this, Moira was startled. Oscar explained, the Cadena flu is a Class B natural crisis, so we don't need to follow the National Pharmaceutical Association's laws. Moira stammered, that, it was Neil who spoke up next, Your Grace, if the White Tower can do it, so can we. We'll send the antidote to the Vince estate immediately. So, but before he could finish, Baldwin interrupted, you two don't seem to understand the situation, he said, looking at them quizzically, the race is over once the White Tower's antidote reaches the Vince estate. Furthermore, the Lord of the Vince estate is thinking we're cooperating with the White Tower. Neil broke out in a cold sweat. That, Baldwin looked at him sternly, I can't turn a blind eye and say that it's the Blue Tower's medicine, can I? After some hesitation, Neil said, I'll lower the price, so. But Baldwin shouted, how dare you, do you want to buy my hard-earned reputation with money? Seeing the Archbishop's anger, he quickly explained, no, I didn't mean that. Baldwin didn't want to hear it anymore and yelled, enough, I don't want to hear anything else, get out. Moira stood up angrily, clenching his teeth. He brushed past Oscar, leaving behind the words, I'll make you pay for this. Oscar sighed, these guys have the same dialogue as villains, just like 20 years ago. However, Oscar still responded to Moira, oh, right, I've patented the treatment and vaccine for the palace. He frowned and turned around, what? Oscar calmly replied, if you want to sell the antidote, you have to pay the White Tower, if you don't want to, you can throw it away. He was furious, gnashing his teeth, but could do nothing. He turned and stormed off. Neil remained calm and bowed to the Archbishop, I'll see you later, Your Grace. He nodded slightly to Oscar as he passed by. At that moment, Oscar noticed a faint scent. He turned to look at Neil. He had a peculiar scent. He recalled Arson's testimony, a fresh and clean scent, like mint. That's all I know. Oscar watched intently. The door closed, but he still stared intently. At that moment, loud laughter erupted. Baldwin invited him. Sit down. Finally, we can talk, he replied. Thank you, Your Grace. He got to the point. We should talk about the price first. How much will it be? The Blue Tower wants 2 million bells. He smirked and spoke. If they want 2, I'll only take 5 million bells. This made Baldwin sputter. Haha, are you serious? A few hours later, at the White Tower, a shout rang out. What the? Fidelina looked at the document, her eyes wide, counting the numbers. 10, 000, 100, 000, 1 million, 10 million, 10 million, bells. Oscar chuckled. Then Fidelina rushed to hug him. Oh my God, kid, I knew you could do it. Maxim patted him on the shoulder proudly. I believed in you from the start. Hamel looked at the check in his hand and exclaimed, this is quite unexpected. What happened? Even the Archbishop wouldn't spend this much. He replied with a smile, there's an additional cost. The other man asked, bewildered, what kind of cost? He smiled confidently.